Hey, we are here and we are back with Dmitry Dragilev, who is a serial entrepreneur. He's founded and used SEO and PR to scale 4 SaaS businesses that have been acquired by Google, SEMrush, Mangools, and ex-Slack employees. He's currently the growth advisor at Mangools, where he's building amazing new tools and apps for the new world of LLM. And Dmitry's approach to building and exiting business, it should really attract and fascinate you because he works 20 hours a week. He goes through these year cycles where he just has fun, solves some incredible problems, and then exits and this kind of lives they call it chill work. And he lives a relaxed lifestyle that we could all learn from, because there's always that fear that you get into business wanting to change the world and you end up building yourself another job and you can't exit it, you can't sell it, you can't even step away from it. We don't want that. We want Dmitry's way of life and what he can teach us. So Dmitry, glad to be speaking with you.
Hey, thanks for having me on your show. Really nice to be here, man.
It's nice to have you. And so did I do a good job introducing you? What did I leave out? What should we know about what has you just focused, passionate, fired up?
Well, I love to help others do what I do, because whenever I talk, a lot of people are like, well, I want that. I want to work 20 hours a week and I want to sell businesses, right? And so there's no crystal ball. I can't tell you exactly do this and this will happen, right? But I can tell you how I came about and how I sort of kind of do what I do. I travel and I speak, and I don't get any paying customers or anything out of it. I just speak because I want other people to do this. There's this other way to sort of do work and live life and enjoy life if you want it. Some people just want to work. A lot of people they need that. I actually wanted to work 20 hours a week. So that's the biggest part that I kind of harped on. And I worked 10 years to achieve this, so it took me a while.
Okay. And so, right off the bat there, the whole idea of PR and speaking, it's kind of weird, isn't it? You put these things out there, you put forth this effort, and it's sometimes hard to track and measure. But then the people that kind of speak prolifically, they say, well, I've got my quota, right? I'll be on stages, I'll do my prospecting, I'll be on podcasts, knowing that the right people will attract themselves to me. But the speaking is kind of one task out of many. So what's your approach to that, especially where it's sometimes difficult to measure the traffic or the leads or the sales that comes back from speaking?
So my background is in SEO and PR. And so those backlinks that I acquired specifically for a specific goal before would be something of a campaign that I would run to achieve a specific goal. And so right now I'm in a stage of my career and life where I don't have that goal of, I want to rank number 1 for this, or I need to get 10,000 customers to do this. I've been fortunate enough to just now be traveling and speaking and sharing just how to do what I do and how to build and start businesses and get them acquired. But people who do have a specific goal, hey, I want to rank number 1 for best bookkeeping app, right? Or something like that, best app for uncategorized transactions. Then it's okay, if you want to rank number 1, then you got to do this type of PR, make sure that it's recognized by ChatGPT and these other LLMs, and then make sure that Google sees your profile and sees all these PR initiatives, and then only then will you start ranking for this keyword. And so it depends what your goals are, and you need to set them up and make sure that it's working for you, whatever your PR activity is. But it's hard to measure sometimes. I do generally know from my experience of PR and SEO is all right, you need this many PR exposure, episodes on podcasts or maybe articles to rank for something specific or links or whatever. Although that has been changing so much now, and with LLMs now, it's a lot more is actually going into PR that doesn't have links but just mentions you. So But yeah, it's just having a goal or not having a goal. I don't have a goal right now, but if I did, it'd be very specific. I'd be targeting very specific blogs, authoritative sites that are mentioning, my customers are reading and are mentioning my competitors. That's who I'll be going after if I was doing PR that's goal centric.
Okay, and that's a good starting point for us. And I think that not enough people think in that way in terms of SEO and PR. And I need to appear on my podcast. I need to get the backlinks. But as you said, it's more of like the EE18 now, right? Where it's like, well, is my name, my keyword being mentioned or used on all these different places? And it's an amazing time to be around, right? Because you can be on podcasts. They post it on YouTube. We make all these kinds of social posts. And so, but I mean, even though you say you don't have a goal here, you're still trying to get this awareness, right? You're still trying to keep your profile kind of current and timely. And so you say that you are going around speaking about how to scale and exit a business. And so, like, that's what I'm here to do for you, right? We'll post this, we'll get those precious keyword rankings along with your name. And so, in the spirit of giving the Google and the LLM gods what they want, what should we know about scaling and exiting a business? What's not talked about enough?
Well, I think when you're starting out a business, it really, a lot more research needs to go into who you're going to market to and how you're going to market, and really feeling out who your partners will be, who are actually going to distribute your product, right? And give you an example that's live, that's going on right now, right? So I'm working with Mangles, right? Mangles is a website that is this SEO suite of tools, very much kind of designed for bloggers and small businesses. And they have acquired Topic Ranker, my last website, my SaaS product. And so we're building a LLM sort of AI search grader, it's called. And so this tool is going to basically see how well you type in a term like best ice cream stores in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and you type in your brand, like whatever it is, Red Rover Creamery, right? And you're going to see if the LLM is actually finding you in the most search queries around best ice cream shops. Like, what are the best ice cream shops? Which ones should I visit tomorrow? Which ones are best visited during summer? All these questions. So it comes up with all these questions and tells you whether you get fronted up for these questions. And it also digs into like which sources it uses to actually come up with these answers. So as a product like that, like say you're building this product, you really need to dig deeper into like what is happening right now in the industry. Well, right now people just are like just shocked with this ChatGPT thing. Everybody's jumping into it. Everybody's trying to put AI in there. And so nobody knows how to properly track it. And so the market is just the wild, wild west right now in terms of like figuring out this ChatGPT thing that just came on board. And so there is no real good solutions out there yet. And so we're still in a very infancy stage of that market. And that's really good to sort of identify is like, all right, not a lot of competition, infancy stage, wild, wild west, but really hard to develop anything right now because it's like there's no infrastructure for it. And so I love this stage a lot of times. So identifying where you're at, I think I love to go into this versus a more developed market might be like QuickBooks for bookkeepers. Like that's another opportunity I'm pursuing now. And that's, QuickBooks is a major behemoth. Like all the bookkeepers are using QuickBooks, right? And I just want to tackle this one little sliver of people who are doing expense categorization, specifically uncategorized expenses. Every month you get a note from your bookkeeper. Oh, this expense is uncategorized. That expense is uncategorized. And so I'm tackling and creating a little app for that. That's a little bit more of a baked market, so there's a little bit more competition. But I have these like specific partners within the space who are going to take my app and promote it. And my app is a bit different from what is currently there. There's nothing specifically that automates it with AI. And so I'm thinking about it right now as I'm building these two products. They haven't been built yet, but I already have partners who are going to promote it. And I'm also have a sort of an exit strategy, right? So I created a company with a 5-year cliff, thinking, all right, in 5 years, possibly I'd love for that to grow to this acquisition stage, or in 5 years, I want this to bring in this many clients. And so I've researched that out, and then I've talked to people. Like I went out and I just literally drew things on a piece of paper and it just be like, well, this is what it's going to look like. What do you think? Well, this is what it's going to look like. What do you think? I asked like 10 or 20 people and I get feedback from them and I incorporate it. They're going to be my first customer. So I think like as you're building products, it's important to do these two things: identify the market where you're at, and then really get feedback from real customers as you're kind of going through this process. And yeah, line up your partners who are going to promote it for you, kind of get it off the ground, and figure out who's going to buy it, if you're going to sell it, in how many years. Have that goal, and if that's not the goal for you, and also how you're going to run it. Is it going to be part-time lifestyle? Is it going to be full-time? Is it something you're going to just spearhead, and how many hours you're going to put into it? Really like imagine yourself for the next 5 years with this project and see how you'll be doing it, what outcomes you want and all that.
Well, great. So, and I think that you mentioned some really helpful stuff here, and I think that feedback is very underrated, right? And just these repetitive activities that you do of saying, well, hey, here's my idea, and like, doodling it out and telling it to person number 7 or person number 8. It's like it gets it built into your own subconscious, but then at the same time, as you said, you're like figuring out your support network. You're finding your allies who will then who will use your product, who will promote your product. It's a cool way of thinking. And then it seems like a lot of what you're talking about here is the long-term planning, right? In 5 years, I want to sell it. I want to put 20 hours per week in it, because when you're planning stuff, there's always the concern of over planning or incorrectly planning, right? And it's like, it'd be great to have a business to sell in 5 years or 20 hours a week, but then how to match that with reality. I imagine the plan changes a lot, and maybe you have to like redo the work over and over. And so that's interesting to think about. And so because we're on a podcast, it's always fun to hear stories, especially where things go wrong. And so you've kind of gone through this process multiple times. And tell me about those difficult middle years. It's one thing to start and plan and exit, but in that middle part, sometimes things go wrong or you're worried the plan might fail. So tell me about some of the struggle stories of yours.
Oh yeah, I mean, there is more struggle stories than there is successes. So anybody listening to this should know that, like 80% of stuff I do just doesn't work, and you have to just get up and keep going. It's demoralizing. Most days are just like, it's just full of mistakes and problems. But one of the biggest mistakes I've had was I did a AppSumo deal with Just Reach Out, which was a SaaS company I was building from 2014 to 2020, which got sold in 2020 and then 2024 again. But essentially, I wanted that quick scale. I built something that allows you to pitch journalists all on your own. It was a SaaS product. It was taking 10, 20, 50 customers, and so I wanted like thousands right away. And so AppSumo is sort of like the Groupon for apps. You can go and buy a lifetime subscription for any app out there. And so the people that buy it is not my target market. It's just anybody who wants a deal. It's not essentially small businesses seeking PR. It's anybody. And the mistake I made was I said, hey, listen, I can't do a lifetime deal, but I can do 1 year for $40. And then afterwards, they got to pay a monthly fee because I have costs. And he said, okay. And so after 1 year, it's going to be $60 a month. And so we did this promo, and they promoted to about 1 million people. We had, I think the first time we had like 2,000 people sign up for this thing. They bought it $40 a pop. And then we did another one. It did so well. It did the second one, another 2,000 people. I was head over heels. And, I went from like 50 to 100 customers to like 4,000 customers. I was like, holy moly, this is amazing, right? Well, guess what? The majority of those people, they were just looking for something to buy as like a cool deal and mess around with for $40. And they've been used to buying lifetime deals for $40. They were not used to being charged in a year after that $60 a month, even though they signed up for it. You forget about this stuff. Plus, they're not engaged customers. Plus, they're not actual small businesses that I need. They're not my target demographic. Well, at the end of that year, I had a lot of issues. So we had 4,000 people that just all of a sudden were charged $60. Well, that was a big problem. The majority of those people did not want to pay, and they also had to be canceled, and they did not want to log in and cancel their account all on their own. So we had to figure out how to apologize to everybody and also cancel all their accounts, and also just go from waiting a year and being like, yes, we're going to have 4,000 customers, to being like, oh, actually, all that was just something we needed to erase off our history and come back to the drawing board and start finding customers another way. It certainly put our name on the map, and people kind of knew who we were. So that was a good thing in terms of like PR. People kind of remembered us. But that was just so much, such a mess, like it was just horrific for us. Hey, show you like another story. I think another SaaS that I was building, I was looking for an engineer, and the people business, like finding people is just so hard all the time. Like all of us can probably attest to it. Just like finding engineers. So I found, this was a friend of mine. We were two good friends back in the day, and like we went to college together, and I just told him my idea for it. And he was like, oh, this sounds great. Let's just work on it. And so we didn't talk too much about how we're going to work together. We didn't talk about like our lifestyle, what we want out of life, what are our goals, what are our personal goals, where do you want to be in a year, what do I want to be in a year, is this something you want to actually work on for the next 5 years, do you want to work on it full time? So he actually, what happened was he was actually didn't really want to work on a small startup. He wanted to join a growing startup, like a more established one, and get some stock, and then kind of go through the IPO thing with them, like join a team of 200 people and then get to an IPO in 3 years. I wanted to just work on this thing for 5 years all on my own without any big teams or anything like that. And so he left, like he got hired after a few years, and then he ended up like kind of didn't want to let go of some of the source code. And then he eventually did, but then he like handed it off to his partner. And then there was this other partner who just was also the same boat. Like he just didn't want to do it, but he said yes or whatever. And so the big lesson learned was like, you got to really communicate, like really be on the same page and really think like, okay, and like how we're going to work together. You're going to have 30%. I'm going to be 50, like how many, like, and that equity compensation also is a touchy subject because you might discuss it in the beginning. And then I've had another one like that where we said, we're going to be 50-50 partners. We're going to be working on 50-50. We're like, all right, yep. And then he was like, well, actually, I don't have time to work on it. I'm going to just hire a bunch of engineers and they're just going to work under me and I just bust out the code, but I won't be involved. And I was like, okay, I guess. So then I started working with these engineers and it became a mess of, hey, you're not contributing anything, like this is not going the right way. So plenty of those like stories that are tough, I think. I don't know. Like, all I can say is like, it's just a learning experience most of the time, but communication is a big deal usually with all this stuff.
It sounds like it. It sounds like communication, boundaries, and expectations. And even the stories you tell, it almost kind of sounds like dating, right? Like the AppSimo thing sounded sort of like a rebound or like a fling, where it's like, well, if okay, you got the test, you want some users. Are they your ideal people? No. Are you going to get married, so to speak? No. But it gets enough people kind of using it. It gets you a little bit of the PR buzz. It buys you some time, right? Gives you a little influx of cash to get to where you actually want to go. And but it sounds like the whole time you kind of had some fun, right? Had some adventures. And we don't have like the limited amount of time, but I want to make sure, like you mentioned something interesting is that 50-50 idea. And you hear that sometimes. Some people say, I did 50-50 once, never again, because it starts off great, but then it seems like the stories I hear, it ends up lopsided one way or another, right? And some of these guys say, hey, I'd rather be like 51-49. And if I'm the 51 or I'm the 49, that's great, but at least like someone's in charge and we know what our place is. And so you had that kind of sort of bad experience with the 50-50 partnership. Would you ever do it again, or do you have any kind of advice in that area?
I think it's really important to marinate on that equity split when you're first starting something out with your partner and really figure out what your responsibilities will be, and then actually start implementing some tasks towards your responsibilities. So have that open discussion and say, all right, well, I'm going to be kind of tackling mainly marketing stuff. Okay. And then you will be tackling product and engineering stuff. Okay. And we might kind of cross paths here, but these will be our responsibilities. Right. And you've already invested, whatever, $50,000 into this project, and I've only invested $10,000. And this is where we're at now. Now, as we work, I'm going to be putting in, approximately half my time on this, and the rest will be on something else. What are you going to do? You're going to do the same. Okay. And yeah, and then you're like, okay, these are my responsibilities. This is what I've put in, and this is what you've put in already, and this is your responsibility. So let's just work and see how things progress right now. And I know that we have to incorporate that company now and issue stock now, but let's just see how this goes. And so I usually like to do like a month or like 3 week, like just work and see how the interactions go, how we work together. And, after that, determine that equity split. And then if needed, you always change it because things could change for you or your partner. You can always change that equity split and be open to that, because it's very hard in the beginning to really like say like, okay, you and I had the same idea and we all are happy about implementing it together, but the contributions could really change in a year or 2 or 3. And so we want to make sure that we're fluid and we're communicating about that. And in the beginning, we might be kind of almost equal. Generally speaking, it's good to just have somebody who has a little bit more so that it's not like indecisive, and the expectations change a little bit. Even if it's like 5% more, then it's like one of you can just kind of run with things and just the other one can kind of trust the other person. And it just makes the pace a little bit easier. If you're all 50-50, it's like, well, I don't want to make that decision. Like, oh, maybe I should change that copy. Or maybe I should, well, I should really ask him. And it's like, well, her, it's like, no, like it's just easier if one of you assumes a little bit of ownership, and it's not at the end of the day really that big of a deal unless it's like it becomes toxic in some way. But in terms of like compensation, if somebody has 55, you have 45. If somebody has 60 or 40, it's like, okay, like, yes, like they'll get a little more money maybe in 5 years if your thing gets acquired, but it's like, it's nothing to really lose sleep over. So that's how I approach it. Just communicate openly your responsibilities, talk to the person, see what they got, test it out.
And it all sounds logical in hindsight, but those of us who are going through it can definitely benefit from your advice to, in that situation, avoid the semaphore lock, so to speak, in programming terms, right? Like, I can't do anything until this condition happens. So this way things get done, right? And you pursue what needs to be pursued. You make the product, find the customers, get the usage, find the exit, and kind of go through this process. And so I think that what you've done and what you're even doing right now, it's something to aspire to, right? Just that even though you're between companies, you're still like, hey, I'm doing the PR, I'm doing the SEO. It's still important to remain relevant, get the traffic, get the awareness, because things are always changing. Those people that say, hey, I want to take a 5-year, 10-year vacation. Well, what will the internet even be like when you come back in 10 years? Might as well just like stay relevant and do these things to pursue the opportunities. And so in our last few minutes of our conversation here, I want to make sure that we talk about what excites you and what people should know about you. So what's the missing hidden question in our conversation? What should I be asking you, but I just don't know to ask you?
Well, asking me is there's one question that I love to sort of have everybody ask everyone else. If you knew that you were never going to make a penny out of whatever you're building, whatever you're working on, whatever you're engaged in, would you still be doing it right now, right? And I think you can ask me that now, and I'd say yes. But I think a lot of people should ask themselves that, or ask somebody else around them that, because a lot of us are engaging in something where we know that we're in it to make a living or buck, and it's fine. But I think we'd be more passionate if we are working on something where we knew, even if we didn't make any money out of it, we'd still get pleasure out of the actual product, service, whatever we do day to day. And that's enough, for us. It's not the end means of it. Easy for me to say. I know I've built and sold businesses, and people are going to say, hey, like, easy for you to say, we just want to make a buck. But I'm just saying, I thought about acquisitions. I was never like, I'm going to hire a lawyer and get these people to sell my business. It was all kind of organic, and all the stories in all the ones that I've sold, it was more like I met somebody who wanted something. So I've always been that lifestyle, like just for the pleasure of it, build the thing, enjoy the process of it. And then, so would you be doing, if you knew you weren't going to make any money out of it, would you still be building whatever you're building?
That's an interesting and helpful thought experiment. They say with minimalism, you say like, okay, what if I remove this piece in the Jenga construction? Would it still make sense? Did it still work? And so by removing the money piece, you say, well, the money is still important to make a business, earn a living and all that sort of stuff. But if you say, well, if money wasn't a factor, would I still do it? It means that money isn't the only factor, isn't the only driving force. And that way you'll stick with it. You'll still have the passion. And it's just great to hear that you're all about keeping all the relationships going. It's like there's not enough people that you can be talking to. Even you still have your baseline, your background radiation amount of I still need to be having these conversations and figure out who can be helps me in the future or who I can help, and just kind of staying part of the human network on the internet. And it's great to hear about. And so you say that you so you sold this company and you have a new one up and coming. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is my fifth. 2014, I sold one. This was to Google. Then I sold another one in 2023. I sold one in 2024. And then there was another one in 2020. And so the new one I'm working on is this, it's called Bookkeeply. And it's basically an automation for uncategorized transactions. So all of us do accounting. All of us have to do the books at the end of the year or the end of the month, some of us. But every month, my bookkeeper is always on my butt. They're like, hey, there's 7 transactions here. What are they? You went to Amazon? What is this stuff? And I'm like, oh, this is this, that. There's emails involved. There's spreadsheets involved. So this is an automation bot that it texts me once a week, and it says, okay, here's your uncategorized transactions. I swipe left or right. I'll put in a comment in there. The bookkeeper never emails me. They don't ask me any questions. If they have anything, they'll just pop it into that automation. But for them, it automatically checks everything, and it just makes sure that everything that's uncategorized is automatically going to me. It's a bit of an automation in an area that I just found that there's no automation yet. It's a QuickBooks app and a Xero app. Those are two main accounting platforms. Again, still in development. Already talked to 15 bookkeepers. I already talked to 4 potential partners who might promote it. I talked to the head of marketing at Xero. So I'm on my game is trying to chat with people and get their feedback and line up my promoters. I'm lining up who is going to use it. I'm talking to actual clients, the bookkeepers who will be buying it. So I'm trying to do as much legwork as I can on the marketing front as the product development is going on. All cool stuff. And I can attest 100%, if I make no money with it, and right now I'm sinking money into development and all that. I still have a lot of fun building something like this. Again, I know people are listening to this and they'll be like, well, easy for you to say, this is your 5th company, I'm building my first one and I got 2 kids and I need to make a living here, right? So it's not about all that, but I'm like, you got to enjoy what you do. You just have to figure out how, and I took a bunch of tests and stuff trying to figure out that a long time ago. And I used to be a software engineer. I actually switched to being a marketer, in my career. It went through a journey there, but it's just so important, But yeah, that's my current company, Bookkeeply. I was actually just trying to get a blog up right before this interview, so it's all very bare bones. There's, yeah.
Well, that's great. And it's helpful, educational to get a peek behind the curtain. And that little blurb right there, I think that was worth the price of admission, where you said, well, the product isn't even live yet, but I'm talking to 15 of this person and 4 type of that person, because that's a slow going process, isn't it? Just finding your people, finding the time in the day. And once the product is live, you can go back and update all of those backlinks and go do those return visits and build
That's
this
what I
relationship.
do. That's what I mean. When you talk to somebody and you just say, "Hey, here's what I'm building," Robert, this is my app. I can go back to you in a month and say, "Hey, that podcast we did? Well, here's the app. Take a look at it." And you'll be like, "Oh, cool. How does this work?" So I might say, "Well, this is how it works." And you'd be like, "Oh, this is unclear for me." I'm like, "Oh, good feedback." So I'll go fix it. Then I'll give it back to you and be like, "Hey, it's fixed." You'll be like, "Oh, cool." So now we had 3 or 4 interactions. And so by the time we have the 7th interaction, well, maybe you'll buy it, but maybe you won't, but maybe you'll know somebody who would. And so talking, and for me, I talk to bookkeepers because they're the ones that would eventually buy something like this. So they have more direct feedback from you. Like, no, this is supposed to be this or that. And so then I incorporate their feedback. I go back to them and I use the feedback mechanism to really convert them into first paying customers, right? And so for me, I'm looking for bookkeepers to interview right now and just kind of chat with. But I talk to promoters too, people that have a YouTube following of bookkeepers or a newsletter, which bookkeepers subscribe to. And I'll chat with them and get them, what I'm doing. And would you promote this when we launch? And what do you think of the app? And get their feedback. And when we do launch, I'm like, here you go. It's live. Would you promote it now? And they've known me already, it's like dating. You got to date all your customers. You got to date your promoters who are going to promote it. And you build the relationship a little bit at a time. You don't just get married. You just got to have these dates and dates and dates. And you go out and see there's common ground. There's common, opinions and thoughts. And then eventually you kind of say, okay, well, it looks like we trust each other. There's a lot of trust. So would you buy it? But it just takes a little while. So while the product is being built, you gotta just start talking to them, I mean, I don't even have the product, but I got a little Figma file. So I'm just trying to show them some screens and be like, this is what it's going to look like. Look at this screen. What do you think?
And that right there, that has been like a huge trend in almost every podcast guest I've had these past few weeks is just the idea of all the return trips and the early feedback before the software gets too set in its ways, right? Before the code base is too huge versus the old way of doing it where you'd like kind of work on features and maybe like 6 months, 18 months later, it'd be like, hey, can we finally start selling it? And then that's quite a big risk versus the smaller, more calculated risk, which is maybe more upfront work, but it's like it ends up increasing your chance of success, doesn't it? By just like building all the relationships. And
Even
so,
with Bookkeeply, it's called Bookkeeply, this new company, and it's like a year, what like a month ago, we thought we were gonna make something completely different from what we're making now. So when we started doing these interviews, and we're like, oh, we're gonna create a manual way for a bookkeeper to create a request and send it to the client. The client opens it up, and it's just gonna be on the mobile, and it's gonna look beautiful. Well, what we found out is like there's 3 or 4 apps out there that kind of do that, and the process is kind of clunky. And actually, the bookkeepers, they don't want to create use a new app to create a new request. Like they're fine emailing them. What they don't want to do is just email their clients all the time. They want to just have something automated where the thing emails the clients, the thing finds all these uncategorized transactions. So we're like, oh, well, now we're going to build something completely different, which is going to be an automation of the whole thing. So now when the bookkeeper signs up, the thing is going to automate, and it's going to create an automation task that automatically pings the clients. And that was a big finding for us as we're implementing or talking to customers, and bookkeepers and what they want and need and thinking about stuff. So we're like, we have to redesign things. And as we're building here, that was a big finding, because of these interviews, like, and we really had to change our course. And, it's just the complete shift, from what we were originally going to build. We're actually redesigning a lot of stuff currently. But it's invaluable in the beginning, I think, to kind of line it up. And it's never going to be perfect. And then you'll launch, and then you'll get that first feedback and be like, oh, I wish we'd put that in there in the beginning. But you try and like talk through a lot of these things as much as possible in the beginning, because once you make a decision, it's sometimes really tough, like to change it back or more expensive or whatever. So you want to have those features. You want to be thinking like, how can this thing scale? Like, how is this going to work in terms of scalability? Like, who's going to invite who? Like, for us, a bookkeeper can pull in all their customers. That's a big deal. Like all their clients, like, so a bookkeeper can have a book of like, say 20 clients, that they automatically pull into the app. And so then those clients can also recommend it to other bookkeepers and stuff like that. So thinking through that methodology, adding those features initially, so that's like land and expand, really is pretty valuable.
very awesome. Well, I love hearing about the adaptation and the thinking things through ahead of time. And we've said all these keywords, so we'll be appeasing the Google Gemini or the Chat GPT search gods with all of our keywords. And so you say this automation is called Bookkeeply that runs on Xero and QuickBooks. And is there a URL? Is there a website set up yet?
Yes, there is. It's just variable. It's like, I'm sure by the time this podcast comes out, there might be a little bit more. But right now, it's just an opt-in form. It's bookkeeply.com. 2 O's, 2 K's, 2 E's. Bookkeeply. Yeah, bookkeeply.com, and we have a blog that I'm putting up now. So hopefully in a week or so, everything will be good. And with that, it says something good is coming, and there's a beautiful picture that's a stock photo of a bookkeeper right now. But it's there. Hopefully that.
First have some bare bones, then to wait until you have everything perfect, right?
Oh yeah. We got our first 2 leads. There was like somebody trying to sell us services for something. I don't know. I know they're not.
Best start.
Yeah.
Well, great. So we said that's bookkeeply.com. We've been speaking with Dmitry Dragilev about so many wonderful things, right? building a company, exiting it, the kind of thought process that goes into your lifestyle design and business creation. And in the spirit of wrapping things up with a bang instead of the whimper here, Dmitry, I like to try to stump my podcast guest at the very end and ask for a fun or helpful quote or lesson that has served them in life or business that they can pass on to us. So, does anything come to mind for you? Help us out to wrap this conversation up in a bow as far as a quote or lesson that has helped you.
How will you measure your life? By Clayton Christensen, actually. It's actually a book, right? And the guy wrote Innovator's Dilemma, which you probably heard of, but he has this quote called, "How will you measure your life?" And the idea is that majority of us are measuring our life based on our financial means and how successful we are with our businesses, right? Not necessarily how much time we're spending with our family, loved ones, and friends, right? And I measure my success, especially specifically around my relationships with my loved ones and my friends, and how much time I spend. So when I meet with fellow entrepreneurs, somebody says, "Well, I'm 100K a month. I'm MRR. I'm making 100 grand a month." I'm like, "Great. How many hours did you spend with your friends and your loved ones in the last week?" And that's my metrics, right? And the book is phenomenal, absolutely, with that quote, because it's like he goes back to his class of Harvard Business School, and he talks to heads of McKinsey and P&G and all these big companies that are, they're really successful. And he says, well, this one is on his fifth wife. This one has 17 houses, but doesn't talk to his 7 kids. This one hasn't, had a drink with his friends in like 10 years. Like, all these CEOs are super successful, are extremely lonely, isolated lives that are just depressing, demoralizing. And he's like, well, is that success? Like, they look really good on paper. Like, they were really wealthy and they accomplished so much, but what is their daily lives like? And like, that's really bad, right? And so I think it had a profound impact on me, and that quote stuck with me. How will you measure your life at the end of the year, at the end of your life? Like, looking back on it, you probably are not really going to look on all that financial success. Sure, like, if you're passionate about specific goals, you want to achieve them and help the world around you, the community, and improve this world in some way. But you also want to make sure that, you have really strong community and relationships with your loved ones and your friends. And a lot of us overlook that. And that's my currency, I feel like, is the time with my loved ones, the time with my friends. It's like, when I walk into a room, that's how I talk to people. It's not so much like, how much do you make? 100 grand, 200 grand, 500 grand? How much do you have in your bank? How much are you making a month? Like, that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's like, oh, how much time are you spending with your kids? Did you spend 7 hours a week or 24? Were you there for this or that? That's really the thought that I love to leave entrepreneurs with, or anybody who's in business with, because I think that is a really important one to have.
That is powerful. You can't get the time back. So how are you using it? And thank you for the wake-up call as far as rethinking our metrics. And let's consider that as we go to bookkeeping.com, run by Mr. Dmitry Dragilev, who is a pioneer, an innovator, a serial entrepreneur. It's been very wonderful and entertaining, engaging, informative speaking with you, friend.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I love your podcast, so it's awesome to be on it.